here we are in 2021. Our first influencer of the year was Bob Beecher. A close second to our leader is Kevin McCormick. And before I even, get to talking to him, I want to silence him so that I can brag about him. Because I've been part of this organization for a couple years, and when you think about an influencer, we're going to get into Kevin's story and how Kevin got into this industry and why he loves MPTF so much and why he does so much for us. But I can't tell you all how many people say, I know MPTF because of Kevin McCormick. And these are fantastic people. And these are people who work in every job of the industry. They hit every corner. Kevin has one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen and is such an incredible person. He is the Executive VP, Production and Senior Advisor. That's the professional title. He is somebody I look up to very much. He is a mentor. Him and his husband are just talk about a power couple, but we're here to just talk about Kevin today. So Scott, sorry, you're another time. Well, Scott, I think will understand that. Kevin, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Courtney.
Although the days blend together.
Every day is Tuesday.
Here we are in a time but today we get to focus on the positive, and I know you share, my optimism and the silver linings that we saw in 2020, but I want to kind of take it back to the beginning with you, because you are somebody like so many of our board members. You could be successful in any area, any industry. Why the entertainment industry? How did you get into this? And why?
I got into the industry by happenstance. I used to think I wanted, for a very, very, very small period of time, I thought I wanted to be an actor, and realized I hated rejection. So it's a definite setup for disappointment. And I'm not sure that I was very good at it, but I really love.
I bet you were.
I love stories, and I love being around creative people, and I've always been attracted to the business of telling stories more than anything else. I wasn't, I wasn't going to be a doctor, lawyer, and Indian chief. That wasn't what really my path was. I went to a crazy experimental school. You traveled around the world for 4 years. I ended up dropping out of school in London, became a stringer for a theater magazine, had an American friend, my parents wanted me to come back to the States, and I got a job for 3 months working for Robert Stigwood, who was a huge rock impresario, managed Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice and Eric Clapton and the Bee Gees and many, many other luminaries. He had a movie production company. He was involved in 10 shows running in the West End. Had Jesus Christ Superstar running in New York, LA, London, Tokyo. Anyway, so that's my first job. I was meant to just stay there for 3 months and ended up staying for almost a decade.
And I bet you have, Kevin. So this is for another time, another hour. I bet the story's just in that decade.
Well, decade was interesting. I was talking this morning because there's a documentary I'm participating in for HBO about Saturday Night Fever, which was, I got promoted, became executive in charge of film and development when Stigwood moved out of London into New York. And I said, what do I do? And he goes, Stigwood said, go buy projects. And I bought the magazine article that became Saturday Night Fever, developed the script, and ended up being the guy who was producing the movie when I was 25 and 26. And it was a seminal event in my life, and really, turned my head around on what's possible, and
that solidified you on a path.
It solidified me on a path of when my gut tells me something, and I identify with something, like what the truth of that is, and there was, and I work at a place where, there's a long tradition of doing musicals, which are dramas with music, whether it's Bodyguard or Star is Born, Jazz Singer, Love Me or Leave Me. There's just a catalog, Purple Rain, of movies that are, they're not.
Darling Nikki in Purple Rain, is if I could pick a song that I hope defined me.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so there's still a place for it, and I get to do that today. You know, I worked on In the Heights at Warner Brothers, which comes out in June in many formats now. And there's some other musical stuff that I'm working on as well that really excite me. And, you know, I did a stint. I came to my career sort of backwards. I worked for Sig when it was like, I left when I was 30. I became a studio executive. It would never happen today. I became a studio executive in my early 40s, came to Warner Brothers at 48, left at 60, you know, and came back to work at Warner Brothers again, which is where I am today. And so it's been a path that, you know, I produced a show in London. I produced 2 shows on Broadway, and made a bunch of movies as a producer. And I like being a producer, but I love being a studio executive. And I work with my another board, at least one of the board members is Courteney Bailey, who is one of my closest friends. And you know, I have the perspective of having been around Warner Brothers since 1999. So I've seen the business change and evolve. And as challenging a time as it is now, we have more opportunities to tell stories than we did before. And it's easier to reach the audiences, which went away because the kind of movies that I like to work on are not the easiest ones to get made, where everything needs to be a blockbuster or be a Marvel movie or you can tell movies in the middle because there are audiences to watch it when they can watch it at home.
Right. And wow, these spin off to a million shows to talk about Courteney Bailey, and I want to know, because I as much as we talk about how many people have gotten introduced to us from you, I really want to know how you got introduced to MPTF. And just carrying on with your talking about storytelling, we can easily segue after that into Real Stories, which is the first true event that I got introduced to, the most beautiful thing we do. Now being in our 100th year, it'll be something we illuminate in such a beautiful way. And I want to get into that with you. But how did you first know about MPTF? And you obviously have a spirit of philanthropy, Kevin. Many people may know about organizations, but you obviously were drawn to a mission, a moment, a feeling. What was it?
I would say that, you know, probably 30 years ago, Roddy McDowell, who was really a mainstay of, it was Edie Wasserman and Roddy McDowell. Roddy had come from England as a kid actor in How Green Was My Valley in the early 40s, and managed to transition to play teenagers for decades. I think at 40, 20, still playing high school students or college students. But was really a fixture around Hollywood. And what was so great about Roddy is that he transcended generations. You know, as his career faded as an actor, a longtime Academy Board member, he became a photographer that sort of photographed everybody who arrived on the scene. But you'd go to his house for dinner, and there would be Louise Rayner, who hadn't been in Hollywood for 40 years, who's the only actress to have won 2 Academy Awards back to back, in there, you know, along with certain other actresses from the 40s and 50s, and along with, you know, the youngest, newest stars in Hollywood. He transcended generations, and I knew him because we met at a show, I think it was MPTF related. I thought he did a coffee table book called Double Exposure or something like that MPTF did a cocktail party, and I went to it. Scott was at that point working on his Goldwyn book, Samuel Goldwyn, and Roddy knew him. And not only did Roddy know him, but a large part of what Scott was talking about was the transition from silent movies into talkies.
Right.
And there was
Which is a big part of our history as well as an organization.
A big part of the history, but the only person who actually was in touch with everybody, Scott was in touch with some of these people, but, you know, but Roddy talked to them all on a regular basis. He knew everybody in Hollywood. He was friendly with everybody that was still there from, decades earlier, who, if they talked to one person who would call them just to find out how they were doing, it was Roddy. And they knew that their stories were safe with Roddy. He was never going to do a book about it. He was never going to spill the beans. And Scott's publisher, my husband's publisher, was determined to get Roddy to do a book because they thought if he did, you would learn. Elizabeth Taylor was his other best friend besides Edie Wasserman. If she could just get Roddy to do a book, that would be the key to all of this inside dope. And we would have dinner every so often when Phyllis Gran would come out here, and he said, Phyllis, I love seeing you every month, but I'm never going to do the book you want me to do. But anyway, he was shocked that we didn't do anything with MPTF, and we went out to the campus, and we began to participate in a kind of way. What appealed to me is I'm sure we have something that we all like when in stories a character has a goal, a character has something. For me, I always looked for those things of I was attracted to characters who wanted to belong. And what I loved about MPTF, which was, this is a really hard business and people have ups and downs. And if you have a career, you're lucky enough to go through the ups and downs. But MPTF is a sort of oasis for everybody, because the values, the aspirations of what it means to belong are all reflected in the work of the MPTF. And, this is a selfish story to tell myself, but without getting into outside issues, my politics are what my politics are. But I'm very reluctant to contribute to a political campaign, but I'm never not willing or eager to contribute to the MPTF, because I know what every dollar goes for. I know what the reach is. I've seen the MPTF literally through the transitions of different people leading it, its message becoming clearer and clearer, and its reach becoming stronger, and the generations. Everything that reflected in going to dinner at Roddy's house is now reflected in what the MPTF is, which is we have a next gen. They're coming up. I think my husband's a big Princeton guy, and when you graduate from Princeton, whether you can give $1 or whether you can give $5, from the time you graduate, annual giving is a big deal for everybody. And I think I felt that it was my obligation as my price of admission to the crazy world of entertainment was as much as I could. As life changed, I gave more and more passionately, the more easy it was for me to give. But I always gave.
And Kevin, there's just so much rich content here with you. I thank you for touching upon that alumni feel, that you talk about Scott and Princeton, and it's that same thing. You get in this crazy world, but you have others who have shown you the example. You are very clearly doing the same thing that Roddy did for you. I think of you that same way, of how you can touch everybody and how your heart is in such an incredible place. But it is a family, and it is a choice to be in this industry, and it is not always an easy choice. But to be able to go along the ebbs and flows is a blessing, and you illuminate that so well. I did hear about just some fun thing. I heard about some fun food that was maybe served at Roddy's. A very gourmet thing.
Very ungourmet.
Yeah. What was it?
It was shockingly, I can't remember what the dinner was, but famously, you went for the people and never for the food. And it was always really terrible.
I heard hot dogs sometimes made their
I never had the hot dogs, but it was just literally, it was just boring, like air.
Who cares about the food when you're with the people you just
No, described? And it was just like you sort of like to be at the table with this woman who hasn't been back, who turned her back on Warner Brothers, gets sued by Jack Warner, banned from Hollywood, and having won 2 Academy Awards, coming back to get honored by the Academy again. It was sort of really fascinating. And he would have Julia Roberts, and he just would always know who the next people were to pop. And I do think, for those of us who continue to be lucky enough to work in the business, I work in a really young, diverse environment, which has been such a gift to me. And I feel totally blessed and grateful to be in that environment, because it forces me to putting my digital limitations to one side. It's forced me to continue to change and keep my mind open and know about new things and really appreciate, what comes next. And I think I always want to know what comes next. I'm always data curious. I want to learn about new things. I want to learn about, I said to a friend of mine last night who's been in the business a long time, and he was sort of saying about how much certain places had changed and so on and so forth. And I said, yeah, but would you be anywhere else? And how lucky to be here at the transition. I keep saying to my friends, there was silence in the talkies, and we're going from, movies, theatrical exhibition into streaming. And but we're still storytellers. We're still people whose desire is to reach out and touch other people. And, whether we do it.
And that's what's so beautiful. We may be at the turn of the century for our organization, but the through line has been so beautifully consistent in the mission and dealing with the changing industry. Kevin, real stories, real lives. You have been such an incredible leader and voice in that, along with Courteney Valenti, along with now, the people that you're talking about, Kate Adams, who is the chair of our Next Gen committee, and many other people, Jim Clymer, who's putting together Creative Chaos and this incredible platform. But Real Stories, Real Lives, again, is our mission event, and it tells the stories. And I've watched you as a part of the process and how you care and how you vet everything and how these stories come across, not only from a voice that resonates with people, because we have to have a modern voice, but also to tell the story and to tell the breadth of our industry. What is it that got you into that event? Because to me, this is just the heart center.
We a bunch of us, like 10 of us, invented the event. And actually, Scott Berg, a little known fact, actually came up with the title of Real Stories, Real Lives.
He did. I didn't know that. Because I know Ken Shear, the gentleman I had the pleasure of kind of following in a small way, but it was a part of it. So Scott as the title.
And our mission was really to create, the Next Gen Council had been this thing which had been around forever, but it never quite figured out what it was. And it had many iterations. And our mission was really to make the next generation aware of the legacy they were about to inherit. And I think what's so heartening is that we started off in the early years really educationally. People had one image. They thought it was a Wasserman campus. That's all they knew about the MPTF. And the more we could individuate the stories of the palliative care aspect or the nursery or, the many, many other things that the MPTF, the wide range of things that are part of MPTF, the stronger our message became. And we were pretty good at it. It was very easy the first couple of years. Listen, I think the audience, we now have the next gen, and we've got to figure out what's the next hill to climb, what's the next thing to do.
How is this event going to evolve? And also just calling out Karen Rosenfeld, who's been an incredible part of this event, and so many other things.
Yeah, and Guyman Cassidy and Billy Gerber and many, many other folks.
The volunteers who are deserve to be
And it gave us great pleasure and sometimes made money. But the message, if you look at any of the stories that came out of it, we were always able to get the leading people who were writing and the leading artists to tell those stories, to celebrate, the MPTS work and the individual people whose story we were telling.
And you still do. I mean, this last year, we, as many people hopefully have seen or look at it on our MPTF.com/YouTube. I'm sorry, YouTube.com/MPTF. We were able to have incredible talent because of you and Courtney and Karen and our group and having Angela Bassett and Jason Bateman and Denai Guerrera, who was fantastic reading story. I mean,
fantastic.
Fantastic. And we're seeing the evolution of that, and you're part of that.
Anna Goldwin.
Anna Goldwin writing, a next gen member, part of the legacy, talking about writing about the Goldwin history.
Fourth generation,
Yes.
And
the intersection is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I'm I suppose first generation, but I have two brothers who work in the business, and nephew who's in the DGA in New York who works on live television, and there's a lot of McCormicks, but we're coming around to MPTF,
Which is great, and you're starting that legacy. It doesn't matter if you're 3 generations in starting it. We know your legacy will be strong, already is. In so many ways outside of even blood-related family, which is what we are. We are family bonded by a common cause. You touch upon something that I asked Bob this same question, Kevin. We're 100 years old. We're talking about 100% participation, which means, right, play your part. We've talked about playing your part. You play many roles. Of course, we want people to donate, but we want people to offer everything that they possibly can. But how would you explain when someone says you're 100 years old, which is a staggering milestone? It's incredible, and we've touched every part of the industry. There is still such a big part of our industry who does not know about us. I'd like to say, in my very short time, we are not a self-aggrandizing organization, right? We are humble. Our workers are unbelievable. But Kevin, how do you account for that, and how should people, get to know us? And you probably give the example to others who are involved like you who can follow your example.
Listen, I think as much as I've adored every iteration of the MPTF that's come before, I think Jen Clymer's work, I think Bob Beecher's work, I think your work, I think the astounding people, the social workers, everybody's work has been so astounding. And I think the message, the breadth of the message has never been clearer than it's been over the last 2 or 3 years of what we are and who we are. And it's not just, for residents at the, Wasserman campus, it is a broad-based institution which transcends the ownership of Hollywood, going from, Warner Brothers to Warner Media to AT&T, from Paramount to Viacom to, where the people's family names, other than the Goldwins, there's very few of the legacy families that were part of the initial group, but the message has stayed the same. And in those days, everybody worked at one studio lot or another. And these days, we work in all different kinds of ways. And yet, I think coming out of this pandemic, which has challenged us all in so many ways, the generosity, the hard work of Jen and Bob and the social workers, the amount of new people under the age of 65 who are now reaching out to us for the help of the MPTF. Listen, I couldn't have been prouder to hear, maybe I'm not supposed to say this, official, it's a bit out there, that the MPTF, I was going to say, we're getting a special...
Say it. Say it. I was going to ask you, please.
We're getting a special Oscar. It made my day yesterday. I just thought it was such a fantastic acknowledgement. I don't know of another institution that has such resilience and such depth of message and commitment as we do. And I do think, I always make it, as does Courtney Valenti, as does Karen Rose, as the people, and I think Kate probably on her generational level too, it's like, what do you mean you don't know about her? What do you mean you're not giving to?
Right.
Because Karen always Rosenfeld always calls me outraged when somebody who's done very well in the business, we can't get them to reach in their pocket and be generous. And she says, well, I just don't understand. And I said, I don't know what to say. You can bring the horse to water. You can't make them drink. And, you can lead by example, but you could also lead by, I'll take anybody out to the campus. I'll go and take somebody to lunch to explain to them just how they can participate. And I can do it with, I have such confidence in the MPTF. There are so many things that I think are transient, so many passions which abate over time. I'm enthusiastic about one kind of music. I'll read all of Stephen King's books and then I'll stop reading them. But I've always been, MPTF is evergreen for me. And I think it's been part of the price of admission to being here in Hollywood and, quote, having a career for good times and bad times, but being part of the fabric of what makes this business more unusual than anything else. And it's my obligation to play my part.
Kevin, I mean, you couldn't have said that any better. It's why we do have a strong safety net, is because of this tangible and intangible love and support that we get from people like you and from generations before you and generations to come, who will hopefully see this on this incredible platform that Creative Chaos and MPTF Studios have brought to us, to not only talk to our residents, but Kevin, we cannot thank you enough for playing your part and for playing many roles in that part, for bringing so many people to us. And we talk about it often. We have a bit of an Everest ahead of us, but it is absolutely doable. And to strengthen our safety net for the next 100 years, it is an obligation, and it is part of the fabric of this industry to make those fibers of that net as strong as it possibly can be. So we cannot thank you enough. I know that we probably have, we actually have a little bit of time, because I was told we have a little bit of time. I would like to ask you, though, Kevin, really quickly, before we get to our fun questions, the industry has been a lifeline during this pandemic. We've seen silver linings. The content that the world, especially our nation and people, have been able to take part in, that is the product of this industry. How proud are you? You talk so much about the internal people, and that's that inside baseball, and you're so proud to be a part of the people who create it. But I would imagine you're just as proud to be able to be a part of people's happiness, because you are, and providing them content during a time when we're stuck in our houses. So, and you're part of Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers Pictures, who have given us so much. I'm incredibly excited about. There's a show coming back on HBO Max that some girls in my age and a bigger, broader audience who happen to like these 4 women in New York.
Yeah. Sex in the City. Yeah.
Sex in the City. I cannot wait, but I digress. But Kevin, you're part of a seed of happiness for an incredible population. What does that feel like to you? And why is it so important?
Listen, I think I'm really personally excited, because I think this time allows us the opportunity to tell many different kinds of stories.
Yes.
I'm working on some movies that'll be theatrical. Elvis with Tom Hanks and Austin Butler that Baz Luhrmann is directing currently in Australia. I just finished working on a movie with Clint Eastwood at 90, who is starring in the movie and directing the movie with a Latino cast, and came in a day and a half, under, and COVID free, and he's worked with him on 8 movies is one of the great gifts in my life, and I like and respect him so much and admire him, and his desire to keep current, to keep working, is really so admirable and so inspiring.
And thank you, Kevin, and then I'll let Jen come in. Thank you, Kevin, also you and Karen, Courtney Valenti, Kate Adams, Tara Schuster, everyone that's been involved with Real Stories. And it's not just a Real Stories thing, it's an MPTF thing. You have been a voice for diversity. You have been a voice for equality. You have been a voice for underrepresented populations. We are here to serve an industry, but the way that you have done so in such a beautifully equal way is, we could not be more grateful for. Thank you for being that kind of voice, as well as representing us and everyone who contributes to this industry. And I see Jen coming in right now. What's your pin?
I got the vaccine.
Yep.
Hey.
I think yesterday was a banner day for MPTF. There were nearly 200 vaccines given. Bob Beecher, our CEO, has done, who looks like a brother of Kevin, by the way. It's like these two, I feel like they're cut from the same cloth. But you got your vaccine. That's beautiful.
Number one or number two, Jen?
First one.
Pfizer?
Pfizer.
Moderna.
So, yeah, Moderna was given to the staff and the residents that are in Mary Pickford House, Harry's Haven, and Herschel Place. And the rest of the campus got Pfizer. All of the residents on the residential side that were eligible for Pfizer got it yesterday. And the staff who are working on campus they're getting it administered in the Michael V. Lewis Plaza right now.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's... Yesterday was a huge day, and I'm really glad that you are taking credit for it as well. Every donor, every supporter, every advocate, every staff member, we all need to take ownership of this humanitarian award. I think Gene Hirschholt would have been delighted to know that it was coming back home to this campus that he cared so much
and
for.
Jen, to your point, Kevin said, I don't know what other organization... Kevin, no other organization, you know this, zero other organization has ever received this award. The great Tyler Perry and the humanitarian work he's doing, he's getting it. And I think only one other time, if our stats are correct, has it gone to two people, two entities, to be the first organization to receive this. And the hard work that Jen could not be more right, as she always is. It is a mark of every single person who's involved with this organization, and is why we all are so grateful and so blessed to be a part of it.
I know we're running a little behind for the poetry hour, but we will make up this time.
Sorry, Harry.
No, it's fine. We're going to go into the 2 o'clock hour with it. Leaves of Grass is up next, but Kevin McCormick warrants more than half an hour, and there's so much ground to cover. Please, please, please take ownership of the award. I have said this a couple of times already. When everyone on campus has had their second vaccine, when the Department of Health says that we can start doing social dining, I want to figure out how we do a step and repeat. Get the award out here and give everybody 3 minutes. Like, here's your 3 minutes, give your acceptance speech. Here's your 3 minutes, give your acceptance speech. And
what a magnificent idea.
I'm super jazzed.
It's all she's got, Kevin. It's like that's all we got. That's all we got are these gems. It's so fantastic. It's so
great.
I think
on that note,
we've probably asked you these questions before. I'm pretty confident that we have, but sometimes your mood changes and maybe your favorite film changes to something else. So, Kevin, what is your favorite film, and what's your favorite TV show? And we have added for 2021, what is your favorite genre or director?
Wow.
Very easy questions, right?
The Godfather.
Sure.
Search Party, coming on HBO Max tonight. It's an anti-millennial show. I love it. Season 4.
Love it.
Check it out if you don't know it. What was the third question? What's my genre?
Genre or director. Some people have said, is Mel Brooks a genre? My answer is yes, of course he is.
I like noir movies, classic noir. I'm really a big fan of it. And I would say very, very pro Sidney Pollack.
Yes.
With David Fincher a close second. There couldn't be less related, but
right.
Both people I know and
who we just had on with Jen recently, and it was
David Fincher was on with us yesterday.
I worked with him on Fight Club, and it was
we're not allowed to talk about Fight Club here.
Oh, really?
That's the first rule.
Right. Yeah. First rule.
Well, Kevin, the beauty of this show is that you have left us so many beautiful little Hansel and Gretel nuggets to follow and to follow up on. So I'm fine with strong arming you on this public forum right now to say you have to come back and talk to us in many iterations of what we're doing. I've learned this well from Jen. This is what we do. You're going to say yes, and we know you'll come back.
And if you have HBO Max, not that I'm pitching,
Please do.
Watch The Little Things at the end of the month. John Lee Hancock, Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, Jared Leto.
That's
Jared Leto. We just saw this last night. I'm equal parts like afraid and so excited to watch this. My husband and my father are so excited to watch this. Of course we will, Kevin. We will support anything that you do.
Yeah, that's definitely on our list. Maybe we invite you to come back for Cinephiles to talk about that.
I bring John Lee Hancock, and let's see who else we can get, Rami and Jared.
John Lee was out here talking about
Mr. Banks?
Mr. Banks. No? Yes, Mr. Banks. Yep. And
in past tense.
I'm sorry?
He's coming, has been just recently, or is coming up?
No.
Yeah.
Years ago when Mr. Banks, yeah.
Get him out here. Anytime you want.
Okay.
We'll get him.
Great. We will get that set up. Now we are going to thank you and Courtney for the little extra time. And
thank you.
Hand it over to Harry Northup for poetry. I think we've got a little disclaimer or an intro. Thank you guys so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Kevin.